everyone, and welcome back to my booktube channel, Lisa in Bookland. Today I'm here to bring you a little bit of a more chatty video about the pros of being a reader. So I've broken it down into a list. It was kind of interesting to think about this in, I suppose, a more systematic way, and I do have some cons as well. And initially I was going to put them in one video with the pros and cons, but I actually had quite a lot to say on both points, I suppose, so I decided to split them out. So that video on the cons of being a reader, which seems like a bit of a strange video for booktube, maybe was still quite interesting, will be up sometime after this one. So in the end I came up with 11 pros, so let me know if I missed out anything down in the comments. I definitely love to hear what your favourite things about being a reader are. So I suppose the number one best thing about being a reader is the escapism. It's like why probably most of us started reading in the first place, or like why we still read. It's a way you can just forget your worries, go into a different world, virtual travel, like back in time, to the future, into outer space, different countries. Especially during COVID, I found that I was reading kind of more voyagey type books, I suppose, just as a way of travelling from my armchair or from my garden. And like I suppose as somebody with an interest in history, I just love reading books that are set in the past. And then for the future, I think it's interesting to imagine what could go right or what could go wrong and what that should be like. So yeah, reading is pure escapism at its best. Most books are longer than films, so you're more immersed, you're in the characters' heads, you're really living their life. There's no budget restrictions or time restrictions like there is in films or television series. You can cast whatever actors you want yourself to play the characters in your head. So yeah, reading is obviously a great escapist activity and always cheers me up when I need it. So the second one I wanted to talk about then is learning. I suppose it's another big reason for reading. So I suppose the obvious way of learning through reading is through reading non-fiction. There's such a wide variety of non-fiction on many topics. Like, it's amazing as well. Like, I think a lot of people, be kind of intimidated by non-fiction. They might think that it's kind of like school books or academic works, and like those obviously do exist, but there's so much kind of more accessible non-fiction, whether it's like popular science or popular history, and there's just a book for everyone out there, whatever your specific area is. They might not be very easy to find, but you'll definitely find them online or something if you go looking. So non-fiction is obviously a big way of learning, but also fiction. So I suppose I always think of like historical fiction. Of course, you always do run the risk that you kind of have to trust the author, because you have to trust them to have done their research and to know what they're talking about. But it is like I suppose a more fun way of absorbing facts or just getting a feel for something. Say historical fiction, you can read historical fiction first and kind of get an idea on whether you're interested in that period, and then if you want to like delve more into it, you can reach out to non-fiction. So yeah, it's definitely reading is a great way of learning, or to find things that you would like to learn more about. Like I read a book recently called Remarkable Creatures that kind of had a bit about paleontology and fossils in it, and I remembered that was something I really liked to learn about when I was in college, but haven't done since because I specialised in a different area. So yeah, who knows, maybe I will go back to that and pick up some popular non-fiction books on that topic again. So the third one I think is really important as well. I know I've seen at least one video out there of whether like reading makes you a better person, I suppose on the assumption that you'd kind of understand people better. I don't know if reading makes you a better person. Like, you could read books about bad people as well, and but it depends what kind of books you read, I suppose, or like how much you're influenced by those books. Like, it's not going to be the same for everybody. I do think that reading helps you to think about what other people are experiencing more. That probably does help your empathy a bit. You can see that people don't think similar to yourself. Like, even if the characters aren't real, the author that wrote that book is real, and the book is probably an extension of what they think. So I just think it's kind of unfiltered. Like, books are often kind of set within characters' heads a lot more than like television series, so you can really get in there and are challenged to understand them. Obviously you don't see everything, or like, you know, they might be a bit more idealized compared to what we actually think about in real life, but at the same time it kind of again helps you live like different lives through the characters and people that are in different situations to you. Like, I mean, for me personally, I suppose I'm a bit of a Charlotte Lucas, so it kind of helps me understand how people feel about relationships and children, if they have families, things like that. Yeah, or obviously people with different gender identities and like cultural experiences, and that it's nice that there is such a kind of nice avenue out there for exploring those topics just by reading, which is something we all love to do anyways. So I suppose a little bit less deep, and some of these are way more shallow than others. So the fourth reason I think reading is great is it's such a portable hobby. Like, I never am without a book. You can even have books on your phone even if you don't have a separate book. Books are great for like waiting rooms, if you're stuck on a long car journey, if you don't get car sick, if you're waiting for somebody and they're late, or you're waiting to collect somebody. It's always great to have a book with you, and I always have a book in the car when I'm in those kind of situations. For holidays, it's obviously a great hobby, especially if you have an e-reader like I do. I prefer reading physical books, but e-books definitely are one for the holidays if you're bringing hand luggage only or something. Audiobooks, obviously very portable as well. It's not something that needs any like prior planning if you're eating alone or traveling or anything like that. So yeah, it's a very portable hobby, like I said. So the fifth one, I suppose, a bit controversial again, I suppose, but I'd say that reading is kind of quite a well-regarded hobby. It does kind of give people the impression that you're smart, which, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, I suppose, or like to have on CVs or stuff. I suppose it's not the worst hobby you can have. I won't say any more about that in case I get into trouble. Yeah, I suppose also kind of related to work. Reading obviously helps at writing in whatever capacity you need to write. Oddly enough, that could also be a con. It's on the cons list for me anyways, but if you want to like write emails, or whether you have to write documents, obviously some people write for a living called authors, but you know, anything like that, it's always nice to kind of have nice turns of phrase, or to be a good speller and that, and reading can really help with that. Readers probably do have a tendency to be creative that we don't even realise, which probably helps with all of that as well. So I suppose point 7 then is reading is a relatively cheap hobby, and I think what I mean by this is you can make it as cheap as you want it to be, depending on what kind of books you're interested in. Like, there's obviously libraries, there's secondhand books, there's ebooks that are in the public domain, and the same with audiobooks. Obviously if you're buying new books, that's a little bit more expensive, but there are so many secondhand books out there in charity shops and things. You can get them cheaply if you have access to those kind of places. I know it's not universal, but definitely with the internet, I think reading has become more and more accessible, so that's always a good thing. So point 8 then, I suppose, another shallow one and kind of related to the above, is that like bookshelves just look nice in your house. The colours, they're instantly, I suppose, a talking point with other readers, and it kind of shows your personality around the house. I suppose it's just a mixture between functional and beautiful. So yeah, who doesn't like a good bookshelf? There's a reason there's so many bookshelves in like cafes and things. So again, I suppose provided you with the space. More on that in the cons. Yeah, so I suppose point 9 then is like the accessibility of books, which is probably getting more and more. Do you know the selection of audiobooks that are available and ebooks that you can increase the font size on? I remember when my granny was alive, you know, it was kind of before the age of e-readers, and she'd go to the library and have to get like the large text books, and the selection was always smaller than for the regular books. So it's nice, I suppose, with ebooks that you can just read your regular books, just increase the font size. I don't know much about what the selection of books is like in Braille, but yeah, I suppose it just makes reading accessible to everybody as much as possible. There's no like fitness or mobility limits with reading, and it's something you'll never get too old for. Maybe you will need the font size a little bit bigger, but it's just, I suppose it's nice that it's kind of a lifelong hobby. And what I also like about this is like it kind of goes across generations, especially I suppose if you read a wide range of books, you can meet a child and talk to them about children's books, or you meet an older person, you'll probably have read some classics in common, or if they still read in the present day, that you can still share books. There's something for everyone. That's really nice. I don't think there's that many hobbies that are like hugely accessible to every generation. So I suppose point 10 then is kind of, again, as much as you want it to be, and that's sustainability. You can buy second-hand books or ebooks or audiobooks instead of buying new books, or even with new books, I suppose you'd hope that most publishers use paper from like sustainably managed forests. So it's not the worst hobby in the world for impact on the environment either. And the final thing I wanted to mention then, point 11, is obviously a booktube community and just community in general. Like, I think in a video recently I said that I met somebody in a bookshop and they were looking for a book and we hunted around for it. I remember I used to work in a cafe and a child came in and they're reading like the third Harry Potter book, and we had such a great conversation about that. Or like then obviously booktube, there's so many nice people on here from all over the world. I suppose especially since I've started making booktube videos, I've made an effort to like kind of be more involved in the community in a way I kind of hadn't really been confident enough to do when I was commenting. There is just that nice feeling out here, and it is such a nice community for this hobby. So yeah, so that's it for today. That's the 11 pros that I can think of being a reader. Please let me know what your favourite things about being a reader are, or if there's any pros that I missed. I'd love to hear about them. When you start thinking about it, there are pros and cons to everything. So I made another video about the cons of being a reader, and that will be coming out at some stage. So yeah, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday for my next video.